increase in basically in cash or liquid assets that the district has at the end of the school year. And what you'll see here is total revenue was $53.68 million in the general fund with expenses of $51.9 million. I always like to sort of show you where your dollars are coming from one year to another in the general fund, and you can see here that the state is in the middle, and that actually declined. Local property tax is on the bottom, which increased, and then the very top is miscellaneous income, and miscellaneous income is basically any federal dollars, a little bit of state money, and it's a lot of miscellaneous income with a lot of local money like tuition and payments, those sorts of things, the dollars that we may receive for textbooks when parents pay for their textbook fees, the dollars that we'll receive from the city for operating for the joint use of the swimming pools, that sort of thing. So that's where that comes from. And I'll just remind the board that one of the reasons why there is a tick up in the property tax percentage this year is because of the change in the TIF that the city of Cedar Falls went through this last school year. What I'm trying to show here is a historical perspective by percentages of where the dollars have come from over the last few years. And again, you can see the state dollars have been declining. That's a combination of, for last school year, again, the increase in the TIF. So when the TIF went away, that brought more dollars into that are used to determine the combined district cost for student cost per pupil and how that mix works. And then also you have to remember that we were experiencing we had a 0 and a 2% allowable growth the previous 2 years from the state, and so that would have tapered that down as well, and there wouldn't have been that projection forward. And the dashed lines on the far right sort of indicate where we think we might be going for this current school year. And you'll see that, again, with the red line, the property tax dollar is going to dip because now the TIF came back into play, and so that reduced the property tax askings and it changed the mix of the state aid income. You see the different breakdowns as to where the dollars are coming from. The rather large acronym in the middle stands for Teacher Salary Supplement, Early Childhood Intervention, Preschool, and Professional State dollars. They sort of roll that all into our, I view it as a categorical, we track it as a categorical. The state tells us we have to expense it as a categorical, but they don't, but they show it on the aid and levy worksheet, so in their mind it kind of is a categorical. If you can understand that. So that's sort of where the dollars have come through this last year, and you can compare it to fiscal 13 to fiscal 14. I went and broke down the miscellaneous income just a little bit more to show you where that's coming from. The big chunk of miscellaneous income from us is obviously River Hill, because while we're responsible for River Hill School, obviously we're the fiscal agent for that. So all the dollars flow through us and then are sent to the AEA, which operates that program on our behalf. And you'll see that last year that was $3.59 million. The 2% supplement state aid is what bounced up the one-time categorical that's not in that other bracket that I talked about earlier. And then you can see the federal money on the top. A lot of that federal money has to do with the PEP grant, and we'll go through that in a second. And walking through our federal funding, you can see the changes. There's the big plus, the PEP grant. We have PEP grant round 2. And now we received about $440,000, almost $441,000 this last year, and a nice increase from the previous year. There's the rest of the federal dollars. So it looks like we had a $391,000 increase in federal money last year. But when you subtract off the 423, we actually went backwards. Okay, because that PEP grant is a 3-year grant. Last year was year 1 of that 3-year grant. This graph tries to break that all down by percentage, trying to show the board where the dollars are going to. The Department of Education requires us to show expenses in those different categories. And for my references, I put the numbers on the far right. Those are the function numbers that we have to use. And you can see that roughly 70% of every dollar that would come in goes directly towards instructional expense, and that would be primarily teachers, teacher salaries, and the supplies necessary for them to do their work. And this might show it in a little bit better method. Would be for fiscal year 14, and again you can see that the instruction is almost 70%, and you can see the different breakdowns of for every dollar that we bring into the district, or what we're expending out in the district where they're going. Facility, and we received prior approval from the School Budget Review Committee. We will be coming to you in November, probably the second meeting in November, with the River Hills Consortium now, because we're the fiscal agent. Cedar Falls has to ask on behalf of all the members of the consortium to petition the SBRC to grant us special education administrative cost relief for the principal at River Hills School. That now falls on our lap. So you'll see that request coming to you in November. And last year, if you'll recall, we did a little exercise with all the different pieces of the puzzle on what special ed's all about. I did bring I had one left that wasn't messed with last year. But you can see there's a lot of components with how you have to sift through special education expense. And not only is it a lot of different components, we'll just take the early childhood special ed kids. These are basically the 3- and 4-year-old kiddos. You can have a kiddo that could be in any one of 3 different levels as well. Basically the only one that isn't in 3 levels is River Hills, where all students at River Hills are classified as level 3 students. To start off with, I wanted to show you, we had 513 resident students at Cedar Falls School that were considered special ed or special needs last year. We had 43 resident students that were served by the districts. And this is where it gets a little convoluted. We had 3 students that attended 2 different schools last year. And we had 1 student that attended 3 different schools last year. And so they will be counted more than once. So if you add all those numbers up, so that they go to Ames, Hudson, and all that, they don't add up to 43, they add up to 1. And that's why. Because every time you move a child from one place to another, it gets counted again. And we served 87 students that came into our district. Most of those were open enrolled in, but not all. Okay. And we also served 96 students, not counting the 11 Cedar Falls has over at River Hills. So it actually was 107 that were at River Hills last year, if you count all of them. What this tries to show is it tries to show the total number of students that we served over the course of the school year last year. Now that basically means if a student is in a special needs program one day, it's counted. That's the rule. So as you can see, we served a total of 739 students last year. You can see the comparison from the previous year. More or less stable, with the exception of level 3, which was, or River Hills, excuse me, which was down a little bit. And these are Cedar Falls resident students that were here on count day, or October 1st. So you've got the total number we served versus the total number of the 513 that we counted that develops our funding for the special needs program. Okay. And these are our resident students that were tuitioned out, and you can see where they went. I had a nice drop in the level 1s coming up, but we had a bounce in level 3s coming out last year. And again, what we're showing here is the resident students not weighted on count day. And so what this bar graph shows is we had a total of 538 students, and we received a grand total weighting of 595.76. Remember, a level 1 student is at 1.72, a level 2 is 2.21, that sort of thing. 9 is the actual number of students we serve, and that would include the kids that are open, that are tuitioned out, or open and enrolled out. And this is the weighted funding dollars we receive.
I thought when we weight level 1, we multiply by a number larger than 1.
That's the weighted count, not the actual, that's the .72 number, that's not the 1.7.
So I'm wondering why the yellow line is below the red line.
It would be because basically you're taking this number times .72.
Oh, times 0.7.
Yes, yes, okay. And there's level 2, and you can see that that runs, historically that has run pretty similar. We had 145 kids we counted, we served 148, we received funding for 169, okay? And then this is level 3, and you can see that the big bounce here to here, last 2 years ago was when Cedar Falls took over River Hills. That was part of that white dip. Okay. So when you kind of tack this all together, this shows the breakdown in total dollars we received from the state for the funding for our special needs students. And that rolls out to $6.95 million for last school year. Now you know why I needed a Rubik's Cube to kind of put this all together. And it's up a little bit from 6.860 the year before.
Is that what you use when you put this report together?
I could never put a Rubik's Cube back together, but I figured this out. This breaks down where the dollars are coming from. There's the 6.95, again, right here in the red. And then there's our tuition in that we received. That's the dollars that flowed through to go to River Hills. Medicaid, you'll notice there isn't a lot of difference in Medicaid. We're up a little bit. Part B funding, that's federal dollars, and that's shrinking every year. Teacher salary supplement money, the state of Iowa makes us record the teacher salary supplement money that's paid to staff members. We have to record that as an in and an out. They make us do it. It washes out to zero, but they make us do it. And then at the end is non-public, which is new this year. And you can see we only really had about 30,000 there, so not a whole lot. Expenditures, there you can see what they are right there. Again, we had $3.9 million in salary and benefits last in fiscal 13, $4 million in fiscal 14. Pretty similar until you get to the very top, where you can see our tuition out expenses for special ed dropped from 1.19 million to 630,000. A lot of that has to do with the River Hills Consortium. Okay. So, this shows us again, I break it out a little different way to show total revenue, total expenditures, and you can see River Hills basically zeroes itself out, which it's supposed to, by the way. It's kind of funny how that works, you know. And what we end up with is, voila, we actually had a positive balance of $94,000 this year. And again, when you go back and you analyze this, where did it come from? Well, it came from two things. One, our revenue was up because of the count. You got to remember, the funding always comes a year behind. And the other one's right here. You look at everything else on there, and it basically balances itself out. One's up a little bit here, one's down a little bit there. But you start looking, there's not a lot of differences until you get to the level 3 tuition. That's the difference for the tuition, excuse me. And River Hills has got a lot to do with that because of how the consortium now calculates special ed expense. Now, did some of that expense get shifted to the general fund? Yeah, a little bit. But from a special ed perspective, that's the big switch. So we have a $94,000 positive balance. We did celebrate by having jelly beans in the back office. So we, quite a swing, as you can see, from 2 years ago when we had a 1.26 negative, and now we've gone all the way to a plus. Now, I would say to you, I wouldn't bank on that being positive again next year. And I would say the biggest reason why is all things being exactly equal. When we added 10 minutes to the teacher day this year, all the pairs were added 10 additional minutes. And was it 30 plus pairs then tripped over the line and now receive health insurance benefits? Okay. So I wouldn't guarantee that that will be a positive in another year. But we'll celebrate for this year. Okay.
Do you anticipate we'll be back to those 6?
But we'll probably be.
No.
I hope not. I hope not.
You
But
remember,
we're gonna take the celebration, okay?
you remember state code allows districts to run negative balance in special education and use that and offset that with
Yeah.
tax rate.
We actually get to keep this. We're allowed to keep up to 10%. And that doesn't even come close. As you saw, we had over $6 million in revenue. This doesn't even come close to the 10% rule. So we get to keep all that, and we'll apply that next year. Real quickly, this sort of shows our funding. As you can see, teaching staff, we had 1 teacher last year and I think 5 parents.
In terms of applying it next year, not wishing to be a prophet of doom, but looking at the prior years, they were all negative bars except for that one, so statistically, it's more likely to be down than up next year. You can help reduce the amount
Right.
of deficit next year with that positive.
So, just for kicks and giggles, let's say hypothetically we were back down to this number next year. Well, you can chop the 94,000 right off of that, so we'd be at 560 instead of 656. Okay? Because we'll carry that forward. And I just kind of wanted to remind you, I've got a couple of graphs here to kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek of where we're standing financially wise. These are some of the terms that we use and where the dollars come from and what budgetary and unspent budget balance is. And when you look at a dashboard indicator, now these are dashboard indicators that the Iowa Association of School Board has developed. Our unspent budget authority, we went up. We went from 8.89 million to 9.19 million, so we went up about 300,000. That'll be the reported balance, but this is the number I really want you to look at. We went from the undesignated unrestricted went from $8 million to 7.54. Now there's a couple of reasons for that. This gap here is our dollars that we have to hold back or reserve because they're categorical money, such as our TSS money, our preschool dollars. We didn't have any, but if we did, they would have been in there. Iowa Core money, those sorts of things. The other thing that this district has always historically done, this amount in here also includes any ISL carryover money. And we had a larger than normal carryover in ISL this year with our BLCs. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why that number is larger than normal, but we did drop $500,000. And so that's something that we need to watch. I'm not saying it's a trend, but it's something we need to watch. You'll notice that we really sort of almost plateaued this last year. When you do it as a percent of total budget, we go from a green background, which means we're good, to a yellow background, which means you watch what you're doing a little bit, because we actually dropped from 15.23 to 15.02. Not much, but we did drop just a skosh. And I more look, again, whoops, I look at this number, because that's our true net.
So that's a percent of what?
That's the percent of total budget against what your carryover, your authorized carryover is, okay? So again, if you're taking, let me see if I can back up here. This 9.19 figures out to 15.02, where the 7.54 figure drops down to 12.35, okay? So that's just sort of something that's been kind of saying at some point we were going to plateau, and it looks like we plateaued. From a financial solvency ratio, we're really doing good. Now this is basically taking cash on hand and dividing it by total expenditures in round terms. So we're up to 13.6%. So from a solvency perspective, we're in very good shape.
Is there a maximum we're allowed?
No. But what this will do at some point is if your cash balance gets too high, you can't levy for additional cash reserve. Now, we're not anywhere close to that yet, but that is something that the state has a formula that says if you have more than, I think it's, if you have 20% cash in comparison to your total budget, that's the maximum you can have. Now, that's 20% of your actual dollars, not this ratio necessarily, okay? So we've been moving that up, and back in through here was where we went through the reductions the 2 consecutive years with state funding. So that's why there was that dip there, and you can see we've been building that back up. And then real quickly, we'll go through some of the other funds. This is our student activity fund. You can see the total assets and the fund balance. The fund balance dropped a little bit. And then you can see actual revenue and expenditures. We took in $975,000, spent just a little over $1 million. And the management fund, extremely close. We took in $1 million, or our assets are $1,071,000, and the fund balance is almost identical to that, which it should be. You can see that the fund revenue is at 475, expenditures is 612, but I will remind the board, this is a planned reduction. If you recall, we started that back in here when we had an awful lot of fund balance on hand, and we've been planning this reduction down here. And we did raise our for this current school year, we did raise this back up to $500,000. So we should be about 525, I suppose, something like that. But that was a planned reduction, okay? This is our district support trust fund, and that should, the assets in the fund balance should equal, and in this case they do. 1 cent local option sales tax, you can see that the assets and fund balance are very close, and they should be. This is sort of like riding a roller coaster when you look at revenue and expenditures. But remember, we sold a band this year. We sold revenue bonds this year. We sold revenue bonds last year. Those are why you have the highs and lows. And obviously the yellow line is all the construction projects that we've been doing. The PEPAL levy, you can see the total assets against fund balance. We had quite a few projects going last summer. That's why there's a bit of a gap in there. And if you recall last year when I said there was a timing issue, well, you can see what we spent last year. We spent 4.13 versus the revenue of 3.74. So we had a lot of PEPAL projects going last year. We're going to have even more PEPAL projects going next year. So that continues to move forward with that. Debt service should be all zeros because it's not supposed to be anything in there at the end of the year, so we must have done that right. You can see there's total revenue and total expenditures, and again, this has to do with when we paid off that $10 million band that year, when we borrowed the 20.5, and this paid off the $5 million band back in fiscal 2008. This is the Christensen Fund, and everything should match out. It didn't last year because remember I told you we had some payables that were outstanding. The grants went out late and the equipment was ordered, but it hadn't been received yet. That's why there was this dip, but you can see this year it came right back where it should be. Lunch Fund, real quickly, that fund balance and total assets, that's been slowly slipping over the last few years. It's continuing on that trend. Revenue is up, but unfortunately our expenditures are up as well. The requirements that the federal government is putting on us for our nutrition program, as you can see, are having internal service fund, I only show that because we're doing historical. We haven't been using that fund for the last 4 years now. Private purpose fund, these are some of the other small grants that we have out there. That carries out. And this is the agency fund. 92 and 93, and there should not be a fund balance because they're not really district dollars. We just hold them all on behalf of other agencies. So in total, if you look at the treasurer's report, we took in 78.6. We spent just, you might as well say 74 million. But the big difference is right in here with the with the sales tax monies. We had that. We sold those revenue bonds last year, and that's what it would have puffed that revenue up versus the expenditures that we had for that. And historically, you can sort of see the graph where the 78 million in revenue and basically the 74 million in expenditures. And you can see the comparison for the last few years.
Is this the one where you said, if you can go back, is there a lag between when you get the money and when you spend it?
There can be a lag at any time, yeah. And again, before I get to the end, I cannot thank Danelle, Carrie, Jill, and my team enough for everything they do. They make me look good. And so without them, I wouldn't look as nice. So with that, I try and answer any questions you would have.
Any questions for that?
and I do need the board to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions?
Thank you for all the work. Be sure and tell them thank you.
Who moved and seconded.
Jim.
Jim, oh, thank you.
Be sure and tell your team thanks too,
Yes.
for us.
Thanks for everything that you do and the business office. We appreciate it immensely.
We actually like being in the back corner. We really do.
They do tremendous work. No other districts, it's unbelievable the work that they do, so thank you.
Keep a lot of balls in there. Or Rubik's cubes. Hearing no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved, same sign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Opposed, same sign, which is motion carried. Thank you.